Welcome back to Art Supply Insiders. My name is Jeff Morrow, and today we have a really interesting topic. We're talking with Brian Buell, Director of Sales for Logan, again, and he was on just recently. Welcome, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And you're welcome. And we're going to talk about some really cool stuff. We're going to talk a thing called FoamWerks. We're going to talk about Cos-Tools. But before we jump into that, why don't you give us a quick recap on what it is that Logan does?
A quick recap. Okay. Logan is pretty much known as the mat cutting company. We make the world's largest line of DIY picture framing tools, mat cutting equipment, and things that allow you to cut, sand, join, and finish your own picture frame molding. We've been doing that since about 1974. We're in the Chicago suburbs. We're a small, originally family-owned company, and you can find our mat cutting equipment in pretty much any art supply store around the world. And that's really what we specialize in. We do have some equipment that goes higher up that would be used in a professional environment like a frame shop. But what we really concentrate are tools for artists and digital photographers, which is a big market for us, and even crafters and even some woodworkers, because you're building wood frames. So that's really kind of what Logan, that's why we exist.
Yeah, I as long as I've been in the art industry, if somebody talks about mat cutting, the only word that comes up is Logan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. So you guys started deciding to start making foam cutting tools and things like that. Why did you decide to do that?
It just seemed like there was sort of an empty sort of place in the industry that didn't offer tools specifically being used on cutting foam board. I mean, foam board is a tremendous commodity that you can find virtually anywhere. Well, so many stores, obviously art supply stores and craft stores will all carry foam boards. You can find it at mass merchants. You can find it in pharmacies. And foam board is used for a lot of different things. A lot of times people are buying it to make signs, but sometimes they're using it to actually make three-dimensional projects, like a craft project. Sometimes foam board is used for like model, like RC. It's being used for the foamy planes, things like that. And sometimes you've seen it used for train sets for building landscape. They build these structures out of foam board and then put the fake grass over the top of it, and it turns into rolling hills, and it looks great. And it's foam board they've been using. Foam board's even used sometimes in window displays in big stores in big cities. They'll use foam board to create these temporary displays that you see. I had a woman once tell me that she was cutting clouds by hand, and then she saw our tools, our freestyle cutter specifically is what she talked about, and she was thrilled and wished she had it. And foam board is also being used by these 3D modeling people who are doing 3D, like architecture, basically, and tabletop gaming. So we created a line of tools that were specifically meant to be used on foam board. 3/16, which is 5mm, being the most common, and that was what was the original objective, and it kind of grew from there.
I know back when I was in high school, right before they started inventing the wheel, we would cut things out of foam board, and it was the most difficult thing in the world for me to cut, because you try to use a pair of scissors, then you would try to use an X-Acto knife, and I could never cut it straight.
Right.
So you've put together a group of tools. Is that what basically we're talking about here? That will cut foam core? Is that what you call it? Foam core, foam board? What's the difference between foam core and foam board? Is it the same thing?
I'm not really sure. I think if you said either of those words, I think people understand what you mean. It's made by a couple of different people. Elmer's right now is a big manufacturer. There's a good company out in New England called Gilman Brothers. They make a really good line of foam board too, and they typically come in a couple of different thicknesses. I think 3/16 and 1/2 inch are probably the most common, but you may see maybe 1/4 or 3/8 possibly. But 3/16, which is 5mm, I think is by far the most popular. And even in Europe, there's a brand over there called Kappa, which is typically a 5mm or a 13mm, which is the same as a 3/16 or a 1/2 inch. But it is a family of tools. So we have a circle cutter that will cut perfect circles from 1 to 6 inches. We have a hole drill which has a couple of different size drills that you can insert into it, and that it doesn't really work like a punch. It kind of bores its way through the foam. We have straight and bevel cutters. We have a V-groove cutter. And the tough thing about designing these during the prototype stages is we needed tools that would do the job they were intended to, but not to leave any evidence of what they did on the foam board. The foam board had to remain clean. Now, the foam board is great stuff, but if you just push your fingernail into it, you can make a little dent pretty easy. So it is kind of delicate in that way. And there are people that use these tools for architecture. And of course, it's got to be very, very clean if you do that. So when you cut a circle, we don't want to see any impressions or compression or anything like that into the top of the foam board. So that was sort of the trick. And Kurt Logan, the engineer here, one of the original Logans, he was the one who came up with the majority of these tools here to do this. And we were pretty successful with it. We launched the line in 2008. And within a year or two, it kind of found its home, found its traction, and it's a significant line for us globally. We sell quite a few of these FoamWerks in Europe.
That's the name of the line, is FoamWerks. Is that what it is?
That's right. FoamWerks, W-E-R-K-S is how we spell it, is one word, FoamWerks.
Ah.
I wanted to come up with sort of something that was a clever,
very clever
title for the line, and it's probably me, I think, who came up with it, but that's what we've stuck with ever since.
Well, congratulations. So does it work on any other materials?
Well, I mean, they are. I get that phone call about really a lot of our products, because most of what we make uses a razor blade, even our Machining equipment. People will say, well, does it cut this? Does it cut that? Well, it's got a razor blade in it. Razor blades cut lots of things. If you don't envision something that you would cut with a razor blade, then this probably won't work on it. But sure, they will work on other things. I've had people say, well, will it cut, say, leather, or will it cut paper? And I say, well, it probably will. I can't guarantee it. It's designed to cut foam board. In the case of FoamWerks, I guarantee you it'll do a great job on there. But if it's similar, it probably will. I've had people who do drywall work who use our bevel cutter to cut joints and just kind of outside stuff that we never even knew existed sort of ended up being connected to the tool. So yeah, they'll cut all different sorts of stuff. Gator board, sometimes we get asked if it'll do gator board. I don't think it's going to do a very good job on gator board. I have tried it once years ago, because gator board has got a very tough sort of skin, and it's more almost a weatherproof type of foam board. I don't think it's really meant so much for building three-dimensional shapes so much. A regular foam board, it works great on. Anything that's similar to that, it's probably going to do okay for you.
So they'll be able to buy this in all of their local retail stores?
A lot of art supply dealers do carry them. Some carry some of them in stores, but certainly online, the larger art material dealers are going to have the full line available, and all the tools are available separately, or there are two different kits that are available in FoamWerks. There's a deluxe kit, which is essentially all the main tools. And then there's a starter kit, which has sort of a smaller channel rail, which is an aluminum straight edge that some of the tools connect to, and then some of the more basic tools. So they are available in kits, which are a better deal. If you buy the kit, you save a little bit of money than buying everything separately. But they're pretty easy to find them. If you look up FoamWerks, you're going to find FoamWerks all over the internet, and you're going to find a lot of these stores that have their own websites. They're going to be listing them.
Now, do you have to have one of the Logan mat cutters in order to use FoamWerks also, or is it an entirely separate product from the mat cutter line?
It's completely separate. Because using foam board, using our FoamWerks line on foam board, you have a kind of a very different objective. People are typically cutting out shapes that they're going to put together to create a craft project, like a box or some sort of a holiday decoration or something. So it doesn't really have much to do with mat cutting. Two of the tools that are in the FoamWerks line that do connect onto the edge of our channel rail would connect onto the edge of several of our mat cutters. So if somebody did want to work our straight cutter or our V-groover on, say, a compact or Artist Elite mat cutter, yeah, it will connect it. But we've never really tried to stress that there's that connection there, because they are quite different.
One of the things that really excited Dave and I when we came by your booth in the NAMTA booth was this thing called cosplay. And cosplay was a word that I'd never heard before. And I saw all this incredibly different, weird stuff in your booth. And we just had to find out more about it. So first of all, tell us a little bit, what the heck is cosplay?
Well, cosplay is short for costume play. And if most people are aware of or have heard of Comic-Con, great big show that happens in San Diego every year. It's enormous, enormous. People like Marvel and DC are there every year, and they're promoting their new movies, and there's all kinds of celebrities, movie stars, and people involved in the illustration, and lots of different companies are out there. It's a massive, massive show. I've not walked that one, but I've walked New York Comic-Con and NYCC, and that is also huge at the Javits Center. It's a 4-day show, and the last time I walked, it was right before COVID, and I think they had over 100 and some thousand people that were going to be there over 4 days. So the whole thing of cosplay is taking materials and creating costumes or outfits as a tribute towards your favorite comic book hero or movie hero, or it could be a video game character, or it could be something you've made up completely on your own. I just worked a show just a week ago here in Chicago at McCormick called C2E2. And that is essentially the Chicago's version of Comic-Con. And I don't know what the attendance was this year. It was packed as far as I was concerned, but I know in 2019 or 2020 was the last show they did right before COVID really hit. They had 95,000 or 92,000 people over a 3-day show at McCormick Place. And I would say probably a third of these, and they're mostly younger people that are into this, probably a third or more of them are in some sort of homemade costume. And some of them are amazing. I mean, movie quality stuff that people walk up to the booth and just, how long did it take you to make that? And it's really amazing stuff. And so they have this community amongst themselves when they show up at these shows, and it's like seeing your friends again, and you're taking pictures of everybody, and they have these after hours parties and dances and lots of cosplay judging events, like a juried event type thing. And so it's a big, 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 big market. So it kind of fell into us because of our FoamWerks tools that we'd had since 2008. And sometime over the last 2 or 3 years, I started getting contacted by these smaller website suppliers of cosplay supplies. And they called me up and they said, we would like to know if we could buy FoamWerks from you. And I said, well, if you're a business, you can qualify and certainly, meet our minimums that we can sell to you. And then why do you want these? And then they would explain to me, they say, well, your FoamWerks tools, they work on EVA foam. And I didn't even know what EVA foam was, but EVA foam.
Wait a minute. You just said EVA
Yes.
foam. That's different than foam core
Yes.
or foam
Oh,
board?
it's very different because it's flexible. It's kind of a squishy, flexible foam that comes in a couple of different thicknesses. It comes in a couple of colors, but I don't think the colors matter so much because typically they're going to get painted to whatever the costume is going to be. But you buy it in rolls, or you can buy it in smaller sheets. Some stores have made a commitment to this category, and they have brought in smaller rolls and sheets of EVA foam for themselves. And what you can do with this is cut it up into shapes and turn it into armor or swords or helmets or whatever it is that you're doing for your cosplay. And that's what a lot of this is built out of, is this EVA foam. As it turns out, our FoamWerks works really well on it. So we were beginning to sell FoamWerks into these smaller cosplay supply websites. And it got to the point that it was big enough that we said we really should be marketing these tools directly to these cosplay people, which are very different than the FoamWerks customers who are using foam board for craft supplies and architecture. Cosplay is completely different. So ultimately, we rebranded a set of some of the FoamWerks tools, not all of them, but some of them that are applied to use on EVA foam, and changed the color. And we changed so they would be different, from the FoamWerks line. And then we marketed them, branded them as CosTools. And so we have dealers that are carrying both CosTools and FoamWerks. They're not identical. Some tools are the same. One's blue and it says FoamWerks. The other one's red and it says CosTools. But there are some different tools that exist in each line that don't really cross over to each other. So that's where the whole CosTools came from. And it's an enormous market. And I've learned that, well, where were all these kids that are making these costumes, where were they going to get their supplies? Well, there's some really good websites out there that cater directly to them, but a lot of them have been going into art supply stores for years and years and buying things like adhesives and flexible paints and blades. And that's what they're doing with their cosplay, where they're getting their supplies to do it. And I don't think a lot of the stores even knew this.
You just said flexible paints. Now, I know that's not something that you manufacture or distribute, but that's a paint you would put on this EVC board?
EVA foam. EVA.
EVA foam. That's right. Okay. And it's a flexible paint?
Yeah, when it dries and sets up and it's on something that's going to have some movement, something that's wrapped around your arms, or it's like a chest plate or something like that, you would rather use a type of paint that is then flexible after it sets up, so it's not going to crack, because there's going to be some movement there. So imagine taking a sheet of this squishy kind of foam and cutting it and connecting it with glue. You cut angles and you can connect it, and then you wear it as, say, some sort of a armor. Well, the kind of paint that you put on it needs to be flexible after it dries so that it doesn't crack. And so there are some lines of flexible paint that work well for this, that they're looking for. That's what they want. There's a couple of lines of some thermoplastics out there, which you buy in a sheet. It's smaller and it's kind of it's very thin, but it's out of a plastic. It's not really flexible. But the idea is you can heat it up and you can press a shape into it and it takes on that mold. And then you can paint this and make buttons or buckles or badges or something out of this stuff. And it turns out our CosTools will cut this also, does a good job on that. And then that's reusable. So you can actually heat the stuff up again with a heat gun and reuse it. And that's referred to as thermoplastics. And there are some stores that are starting to carry some sheets of thermoplastic.
Wow, this is a whole world that I have absolutely no knowledge on whatsoever. So tell me.
I didn't either until a few years ago.
Wow. So it's CosTools. It's COS-TOOLS, right?
.com. That's the website. You'll see the whole listing of all the tools, videos. We have kits available also in the CosTools, same like the FoamWerks. We have a starter kit, essentially like a deluxe kit, which has all the main tools, and it's a better buy when you get the kit versus buying them individually.
Tell our audience a little bit about the individual tools themselves. What is it that they do specifically? It sounds to me it's just a razor blade.
Well, they essentially, most of them do use a razor blade, but they are meant for specific purpose. And some of the more popular tools that are in the CosTool line, we have basically a CosTool knife, which is, I guess, not a whole lot different than a box cutter knife, but it's a very sturdy one. We use a really sturdy blade and a high quality grind, so it's very, very sharp. You can just use that with your hand freestyling, and that's kind of how they've been doing it for years. It's essentially holding like a box cutter and doing this. But we have another tool that is a straight and bevel cutter, and so you can quickly set the tool to either cut a 45-degree angle or a 90-degree angle, and you run it along the channel rail, which is part of the CosTool line, and it'll cut that angle for you. So sometimes when people are seaming together two pieces of EVA foam in order to create a wrap or something around their body or something like that, it's better to take two 45-degree opposite angles to bring them together, and they use adhesive, and then they could even back over the top of it with some sort of other strip adhesive, and then the whole thing gets painted over and you don't see it. So a 45-degree angle is very interesting to cosplayers. We have another one that'll do 3/16 as a freestyle cutter. It's got a little sharp, pointy push style blade. And if you had sort of taken a template or a freestyle draw a shape onto a piece of EVA foam, then you can drop this tool right in on your line and just push it and freestyle this shape out. It gives you just a very clean, very good cut. The big thing about the CosTools that we've learned, though, is you really want to use foam board as an underlayment, just like with the FoamWerks. A lot of times these people doing these costumes are used to using the green self-healing vinyl cutting mats, which is what everybody always used. Well, the thing about the CosTools and the FoamWerks really also, some of these blades they're very, very sharp, but some of them are very small and very delicate, and they don't like to be dragged through the hard rubber self-healing mat. The best to use, I always tell people, is to buy yourself just a cheap piece of foam board, which you can find anywhere, and tape it down to your work surface. Work on top of that, and when it gets completely used up, then just you flip it over and use the other side. You'll get a lot longer blade life, and you'll get better performance out of the tools if you do that. I think that the knife that we make probably doesn't care because it's a pretty sturdy knife, but some of the other tools like our circle cutter and our hole drill and certainly the freestyle cutter, you're going to get longer blade life if you use a piece of foam board underneath. So we have those. We have another tool which is a V-groover, which has two opposite 45-degree angles. You connect it onto the channel rail and you pull it across a piece of EVA foam, and you're going to preset the depth so it almost goes all the way through the two blades, but not completely. And then what happens is that excess strip falls out and it leaves this 45-degree trench, and it allows you to make a 40 or a 90-degree fold very cleanly. There's no compression or streaking on the other outside edge. So if they were making some sort of a body wrap piece of armor and they were to cut parallel V grooves a couple inches apart all the way around, well, it's going to so much more naturally want to wrap around them because you're removing that excess that allows that curve, that radius to happen. We have a hole drill that will cut 3 different size perfect holes. Sometimes people, it's not the hole that they want the little round piece of EVA foam that comes out because it looks like bolts or rivets or buttons or something like that. And these are very, very creative people. They can turn scraps into just about anything. So
these are people that already knew that this is what they wanted to make. They just didn't have the proper tools to be able to make them.
Yeah, they were doing it just with a hand knife in a lot of cases. I've had so many people tell me trying to cut a circle on EVA foam, they tried everything. They would try laying a bowl, like a bowl upside down and trying to cut around that, or they would try to use like a protractor type to trace a line and then they said, just never comes out and it takes so long to do it. And you use our circle cutter and you can cut circle after circle in minutes compared to what it would be by hand, and they're perfectly clean. So that so many people come up and say, boy, I wish I would have had these tools when I did my something build, before. And so that's always rewarding to hear that.
No kidding. Now, you say your circle cutter. How big and how small of circles can you cut with that?
Circle cutter will do anywhere from 1 inch up to 6 inch circle.
Oh,
and
my.
You're going to place it right on top of the foam, and it's got a handle sort of crank on top of it. And as you rotate the crank around, there's a dome that sits on top of the EVA foam. There's a little retracting pin that tells you where the dead center of the circle is going to be. So you're not guessing. If you need it to be in a specific area, you can very much do that. And as you turn the crank on the top, it threads a blade down slowly until it passes all the way through your foam, and then you'll feel it starting to make contact with your foam board, and then you stop. There's no reason to continue to crank into your own foam board. That's just your underlayment. You just lift it straight up, and you've got a circle anywhere from 1 inch to 6.
Audience, again, where can they go to buy Cos-Tools?
We don't sell directly at all. Logan is a manufacturer only. That's the way we've always been. We only sell to stores. But we're here as sort of a technical help, and we're the sort of a demonstration destination. Our website is, you can go to our website on the CosTools website, and there's video clips for all of the tools. And we post a lot of projects that we've done. We work with influencers around the world. I've got dozens of people that we work with. We usually do a couple of projects a month, and somebody somewhere will put together some project of something, and I'll get a video that I can post on social media, and it's being done with our tools, and that's always a lot of fun because I don't have the talent to do what these people are doing, but they do. So I just let them do it. When I just did this show, though, I got to meet several people that I'd only talked to on email or maybe on the phone that were coming to this show, and they were on panels as judges. These are serious people who are very talented and well known in this community. And I got to meet some of these people face to face and thank them for how much they've added to our line, and how much more interesting it is when you can see some of the things that you can do with the tools.
Thank you so very much. This, like I said, this has been absolutely outstanding. You've been listening to the Art Supply Insiders. Check back with us often as we talk about the world of art and craft supplies. If you'd like to hear more of these podcasts, please hit the subscribe button, and we'd really appreciate it if you tell a friend. If you want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at www.patreon.com/Art Supply Insiders. Now go out and create something with Cos-Tools.